Welcome back to Highly Successful Couples, the podcast that helps couples grow together instead of growing apart. I'm your host, Nick Solacek, and today I have a very special guest, best-selling author of a book called Man the Fuck Up, Chris Menz, who is a transformational coach, has a wide range of different skills in his background. And I recently met Chris through a transformational program I was involved in, so I'm very happy to have him here on the show. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much, my friend. It's nice to connect with you again. We got together in person the other day, had a fantastic conversation, and Noah's excited to come on and chop it up with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I appreciated about you when we met is this sincere sentiment, that you expressed about supporting other people, working together, collaborating. And if I remember correctly, one of the questions you asked or posed was, hey, if there's anything you need or any support that I can offer you, let me know. Like, it was a very collaborative feel. And one of the things I love about that is that guys can be very competitive with each other. And so there can be a lot of competition for status, position in society, who's got the most clients, who's got the most money. And the shadow aspect of guys is that we're not always looking out for each other. And there can be this very territorial kind of way of relating. So appreciate that about you.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point. And that's something along my journey that I've had to be very hypersensitive of is how my ego is kind of controlling different aspects of my life, whether it be that comparison syndrome, seeing someone else doing better than me and maybe feeling that sense of competition, or in my relationship where there's an opportunity to, take accountability and say those all important words, which is, I'm wrong. I recognized what I've done and I apologize. Just that overall aspect of adopting a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And I think a lot of, traditional masculinity, which I'm sure we'll get into, it subconsciously kind of promotes that fixed mindset where, this is how we are and this is how we operate. And that's one thing I've had to have many personal battles with myself on is that whole aspect of ego.
Yeah. What inspired you to write Man the Fuck Up? What's part of your journey there?
So I was inspired. I've had quite the journey, lots of ebbs and flows, and, not to back up too far, but I developed the, anxious attached, codependent, fear of abandonment sort of persona, which started kind of when I was 13 years old. My parents got divorced. My dad came out as gay, and it was completely out of left field for me. And what ended up happening as a result of that is there was this imprint of no matter how solid something is, no matter how much love or trust or anything like that is present, that something that seems so perfect, quote unquote, can be taken away in an instant. And so I adopted sort of this sense of control over different aspects of my life. It would show up in relationships where I would get, insecure and overthink and everything like that. And so my journey through life since that point, there was substance abuse involved, just to mask kind of what I was feeling. That went on for many years. And I just got to a point where I started to break through these different glass ceilings. I started to get curious about why I was acting this way, why I was feeling this way, where did my triggers come from, and things like that. And in addition to that, what happened was my version of masculinity that I was operating in, I started to recognize that it didn't feel like it fit the mold of traditional masculinity. A lot of sort of alpha, don't show emotions, and, all of this type of thing. And it felt out of alignment for me. And so I continue my personal growth. I'm doing my reading and things like that. And kind of got to the point where I was, reading similar work that resonated with me about, and just validating how I feel as a man. My definition of masculinity is enough. yours, Nick, your version of masculinity is enough. And so I got to the point where I felt like I had a unique enough story where I sort of wanted to make my message and just provide additional validation for other men who might be going through the same thing. There's even a chapter in there about fatherhood and how that can look. And that's sort of how the book came to be, was just the idea that I wanted to validate myself. I wanted to validate others out there who might be going through the same thing, and provide a piece of work that I could be proud of on the imprint of moving masculinity forward.
The title of your book is interesting because knowing a little bit about you and your approach to life, and just knowing a small part of your growth trajectory, this phrase, man up, it is kind of rooted in maybe a unhelpful, or what some people call a toxic idea, which is that manning up means, you need to suck it up, and you need to bottle it up, and you need to move on, and you need to get it together. And it's not okay to be not okay. It's not okay to cry. It's not okay to be sensitive. And I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, maybe from your perspective. What do you mean by man the fuck up? Because some people might hear that, maybe like a triggering title for them, and think, who's this guy?
It has been. Yeah. It's tough to market a book like that, certainly, for sure. But the most important thing about the title is the quotes around man. It's man the fuck up. And the reason I titled it that, and I had a couple of different titles, I kept coming back to this title. I'm like, I can't title this book anything else, because that phrase, like you perfectly articulated, that's what I heard throughout all of my high school years and things like that, was man up in that light, which is don't show emotion, suck it up, other phrases like grow a pair, things like that. Right. And I heard that all my life, and I wanted to flip the script on that. And what I mean when I say man the fuck up is, let's not ignore the beautiful things that make us men. We have a lot of great qualities in masculinity that I think are fantastic and can be beneficial, but let's add the component of emotional intelligence in there, and being able to express your feelings and cry if you need to, and that not taking away from who you are as a man, but building on the masculine frame to usher in a more modern man, for lack of a better word. That's where that title came from.
Yeah. I was watching a movie last week, rewatching an old movie with Denzel Washington called Man on Fire. And I'd probably be as bold to say that one of the scenes in there where he's interrogating someone is one of the coldest kind of interrogation scenes that I've seen in cinematic history. And I enjoy that. It's sort of interesting the way that we can enjoy these violent situations when they're justified, where a guy is, torturing someone to save a helpless, innocent person. And, this is an action movie. It's a guy's film. And I found at the end, I actually got choked up and I welled up with emotion in a way that I would have never had done in the past. And for me, I've had that experience a few times in the past 3-4 years because of the depth that I've gotten to with my own partner, which is really developing a relationship to myself, widening my range of ability to do this thing called hold space, which ultimately is listening without a sense of judgment, listening non-defensively, being able to hang in there when your own partner or someone close to you is talking about their fears or vulnerabilities, or maybe the things that they're upset with you about, so widening this range to do that, but also to feel, to be in touch with what I'm experiencing, and for it to be okay for it to be that way. And there's something I'm experiencing, which is like kind of reclaiming parts of myself that were underdeveloped or lost along the way.
Yeah.
And it still surprises me from time to time. Like I was surprised at myself at the reaction at the movie, which is supposed to be an action popcorn flick,
I hear you. And I sometimes, my emotions surprise me. It could be something as simple as a Geico commercial comes on, and that might get me going. So, I don't know what the rhyme or reason is, but what I've learned to do is just embrace it when it comes. There's a reason it's there, and there's no sense in bottling it down. If I need to have a moment, being introspective enough to give myself the grace to do that and not feel like it's chipped away at who I am as a man. And you said it a second ago, you know, whether it's relationship with partner or anything, everything's a mirror, and it's all an opportunity for us to look inside and grow. And I would imagine, you know, with your current partner, that has been a mirror for you to grow into these other areas of your life where you're surprised by certain emotions that come up at times where they otherwise wouldn't have before. And maybe you could speak to that a little bit with regards to kind of your growth and where you've seen yourself over the years and how you feel in this current relationship that you're in.
Well, there's a lot that I could say about that. And if we can just benchmark that for a second, as
Yeah.
we're talking, I'm thinking, you know, if a more feminine person or a female is listening to this conversation between us, it might occur to them that, wow, guys, come on. Like, yeah, you have emotions. Like, geez, like get with the program. And yeah, big deal. You had a little tear. But I think this is really like emphasizing a key point, which is how disconnected a lot of men are from their emotions, how bottled up certain things are, how unaware they can be of their own needs, their own frustrations, because there is this emphasized part of culture, which is like, man up, get on with it, get to work, get stuff done. And, you know, don't let anyone know that you're struggling, and don't let anyone see you bleed.
And
I think it's an important point because it's sort of like we need a little bit of empathy here for each other. It's one of the things that couples struggle with, is the ability to sense what they're going through, to sense what it's like to be them, what it's like to be in their shoes.
mm-hmm.
And women in particular can have a hard time empathizing with their man for a variety of reasons. But one is that the guy actually doesn't say what's on his mind or doesn't talk about the stress that he's under. And it doesn't occur to him to even do that. It's just an unconscious, automatic thing. It's just how it is. I'm fine. I'll take care of myself. Don't worry about me. And then the partner can be left in the dark.
For sure. And what a beautiful place to start with somebody, though, because if you are coaching someone who's in that space, and I've had a number of conversations with people, even dealing with that myself, with regards to that emotional expression. And it's amazing to see when you can get a guy to sort of get uncomfortable with that aspect and just, you know, start sharing, and you know, whether it's as simple or as mundane as they might think it is, whether it's stress on the day or something like that. It's amazing to see what can happen in a relationship with regards to that, because, you know, women and men are different in the sense that women are far more emotional creatures. They are tapped into their emotions. And if you're not creating some kind of emotional safety and security for a woman, a lot of the time that can create a disconnection. And, you know, I've seen it in my past. That's something that I'm happy to say with my current partnership, that we're both really great at expressing what's on our minds. The place that we have to work is when we're in that moment of something's bothering me about you. Because the funny thing is, and you know, we won't get too deep on this, but my inner child trauma and her inner child trauma are very much like this at times. And so understanding and embodying kind of that self-regulation, you know, if I say that I'm coming and I have space for you, I want to hold space for you, but the space I'm needing to hold is some kind of a criticism. There's really, you know, being able to tap in and not allowing yourself to get to that ego defensive place is really an ongoing practice.
Yeah. One of my mentors just tries to keep it to 2 points as like a point of advice for men specifically, which is don't take it personally. Don't make it all about you. Don't go in your not good enough story, and avoid getting reactive. So instead of exploding, getting loud, outputting energy, instead of collapsing, shutting down entirely, becoming non-responsive, how can you just stay in the moment, stay present, be curious, and hang in there? You know,
That's a great point. One thing, and it's very linear. It's just sort of a different analogy that I use. You know, in moments of holding space, in moments of holding trigger, is remembering that I have two ears and one mouth, and I should use these a lot more than I use this.
yeah,
And that's especially in times, when I am holding space. And if it comes to some kind of self-criticism, and I love what you just said about not getting into your "I'm not enough" story, because that's inevitably where we go. It just scratches the wound of your history, and you want to go into defense mode. I see it all the time, but there's such power, especially for someone who is, I like to say, anxiously attached in recovery. Is we want to fix things right away. That's what we want to do. We don't want to go to bed angry. But the most powerful thing you can do, especially when you get to that elevated state, is recognizing when you get there and giving it time. Doesn't have to be long. Give it half hour, give it an hour, come back. You have time to get yourself to a regulated state. The key, and the key is coming back with an open heart. And if you can check those boxes, you're going to have a much more successful conversation.
yeah. One of the things you talked about there is how your partner's wounds, hurts, fears, traumas, things from the past connect directly to yours and they interface together. And me and my partner feel exactly the same. And in my work with couples, I find that this is true for everyone. And it's actually part of the thing that I'm often talking about on the show is how all relationships are, trauma bonds in some way, whether they're light or heavy versions of that. Some of that can get really unhealthy, really painful. But ultimately, we're attracted to our partner because they remind us of someone from our past. They represent a match for this idea we have in our psyche about familiar love, about our home, about our caretakers. And a lot of people get stuck there in the frustration, in the agony of that. And just, why can't you meet my needs? Or why can't you love me in the way that I want to be loved? And they miss this bigger possibility, which is about growth, which is about noticing that, wow, we've got deficits.
Yeah.
We, you and me have growth edges. I'm not a perfect person. You're not perfect. And that maybe we've been brought together here to learn something, and that it's actually possible to transform these dynamics instead of fighting about them over a lifetime and staying stuck on the same hamster wheel of resentment and complaint and negativity.
Yeah, 100%. And it's recognizing that, if she triggers a trauma in me, it's not, it's quick for me to get frustrated and angry at her, when if you have that ability to go inside and recognize, oh yeah, this was from 13 years ago when my parents got divorced, and I can see why that's triggering, but I know she loves me and I know that wasn't her intention. I just took it a certain way, and have that ability to go inside. It's just so powerful on paper. And listen, anyone listening, on paper, it's very easy. In reality, it's one of the most difficult things I've found to actually be able to exercise the ability to do that. But like any muscle, right, it's just practice.
Yeah, I agree. I borrow a phrase a lot from another teacher named John Weiland, and he calls that moment sort of the 500-pound deadlift, which is how can you do something which feels, really difficult, impossible for you to do. And you do have to train it. It is a muscle and it does take practice, and it gets easier over time as that awareness increases, that felt sense of awareness in the body of what I'm experiencing, the practice with connecting the dots, noticing the patterns, noticing the things that repeat, and being able to help your partner understand more about why this is an important issue. And it's amazing how that understanding, which is like empathy, can help heal the wounds, can
100%.
help resolve energy, reduce the triggers, and have us more as a pathway there, which is have us more focused on, hey, what do we need? And how can we really be great partners for each other? And what is the vision? What's the positive reality we want instead of, these negative moments or these triggers?
Yeah, and I find, for me personally, I find journaling at times can be really good, especially in moments where I'm feeling a trigger come up more and more. I call it my playbook. I'm a sports guy, and what's if I'm coming with, if there's some kind of defense and I need to, what's my offense going to be here? I go to my playbook. Oh, this is a trigger from when I was 13, for example, and go to that. But I find journaling so profound because when there's those moments of, this has happened. What do I do? I want to remember how to get out of it as soon as possible. And I want to go, I need, and that's often where I go. If I need to take 30 minutes, I'm going to go to my playbook and remember this is kind of what happened. Now I can come back with an open heart. And, a lot of the times in my playbook is remembering that it's me and my partner versus the issue. It's not me versus my partner. And if I can get kind of more into that mentality, I found a lot more success. That's where it's like, and you just said it at the end there, like, what are we going to do here? What's our, I forget how you worded it. It was very well worded, but it's just these little things to focus on to get us out of our cycle of defense and trauma and all of that stuff.
Yeah. And I find it's difficult, when you're working through these things with your partner who is, in a way, this energetic fit for you, this match for your wounding. But um, women do tend to be, I think, a more emotionally developed, more willing to work on things, where men can have a little bit more resistance. But at least we're usually both in a place where maybe we don't know how. We're stuck. We're not sure how to work through this. No one's ever taught us. We haven't learned the skills. Some of the things we've tried maybe haven't totally worked for us. And we can be in a vacuum. We can be isolated and just in that struggle together and not really have other people to bounce ideas off of. I mean, professional support obviously would be a great option for many people, but even just having community, even just having people that, hey man, wow, I get that. Or, hey, I've never been through that. Like, are you doing okay? Do you need anything from me? Like having friends, having, a mentor, having a support group, a mastermind, something like this. So I wonder if community has played a role for you at all. And if there's anything that, is coming up for you as I'm mentioning that as a important characteristic.
Yeah, a couple of things are coming up. I remember early on in my journey, it was right at the beginning of my serious dive into personal growth. It was after my separation in 2020. And a lot of these traumatic moments in our life seem to be very, awakenings. When something ends, there seems to be something really big. And for me, I saw very clearly, I throughout my life I had relationships that wouldn't make it past the 3 year mark, and my marriage was a different story. Together 8 years, married 5, but still it didn't work. And so I just got to the point, 30 years later, that I should look at my side of the street. And so I started down my personal growth journey. And the only reason I preface with that is because the first thing I did was an environmental scan, I call it. And I was looking at the things in my life that I was consuming. Who was I hanging out with? Who was I spending the most time with? And I realized that the direction that I was going, I didn't have community support that was going to take me there. So I basically did a whole inventory of my friends list, and 95% of them didn't fit the bill. They were still partying quite a bit and everything like that. And so part of my personal growth journey was having that growth mindset of, getting mentors, getting, aligned with people who were on my same journey, and getting uncomfortable with the idea of putting myself out there and asking for help. And I think it was us when we talked the other week. I was telling you that statistic on how many more miles a year men drive than women do in a vehicle. I think it's something like 75 extra miles because we refuse to stop and ask for directions. And it's kind of linear to what we're talking about here, because the more that we can ask for help, the more that we realize that we can't do it. It doesn't have to be a lonely island. The phrase personal growth can be deceiving because of the word personal makes you feel like you need to do it yourself. But for me, community and aligning myself with groups and asking for help and that whole inventory of my environment around community was massive.
Yeah. One of the things that comes up here is just the myth of the self-made man, and how there's this idea in culture that, and we see it on Instagram in certain channels and certain silos and certain perspectives, that, you know, you need to make yourself and you need to get out of bed at 5 in the morning and you need to grind, grind, grind. And if you're not in a position that you want, you need to hustle and you need to not go out and not see friends and you need to make sacrifices. And, you know, I think anything we want to achieve in life, yeah, we need some discipline. We need a strategy, right, that works. But the only way that I was able to quit my job, for example, in sales and transition to coaching, I didn't do that on my own. I had been working with a mentor for several years. I had been sitting in men's groups with people saying, "Hey, how are you doing? You told us that you don't like your job. We've been hearing about that for about a year. What are you doing about that? And if you don't want to do that, what do you want to do?" And there was a consistent curiosity, definitely in some moments a firm challenge. And along the way, even when I made the commitment and I made the choice to leave the sales job, try coaching, um, there were people that offered me opportunities. There were people that offered me support, guidance, you know, and there's no way that I could just do all this by myself. And the work that the growth I've experienced in my relationship, the work I've done with my partner, again, you know, I need her for that too, this mirror, this person to reflect back.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that some of us have this idea that we've all got to do things ourselves. Don't stop to ask for directions, because that means something negative about you. And as a real man, as a confident man, as an alpha man, uh, you know, and you got to figure it out. And, you know, you just need to struggle through it. Um, I'd like suffering to not be a part of life, but
100%.
it's definitely baked into the scenario. And I think that things can get pretty isolating for guys when they're in they got some of these bad ideas, they're alone, they don't have support, they don't have community. The stats on, you know, people identifying how many friends they have are scary. So I think a lot of guys are in difficult positions. And if there was someone listening to this who was in that position, who felt isolated, who felt like maybe they can't really name one or two friends, maybe they don't have community, I'm curious if there are any recommendations or pieces of guidance that you would give to someone in that position.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it really comes down, for me at least, and what I found, you know, speaking to other guys as well. For me, I just started saying yes to things. I was very prone to saying no, and whether it be, you know, going out with a new group of people, or hey, there's this event going on this weekend, you want to come, I'd be very quick, because I always brand myself as an extroverted introvert, and I never know when it's going to hit, and it's usually when it's kind of a new environment or something. I feel a little more introverted sometimes, but whatever the case may be, I just started kind of saying yes to more things, and through that, you know, meeting other individuals, and you know, now that was comfortable saying yes. So now I continue, and I just continued building that way. But I also didn't shy away from my own personal growth. You know, I found a number of individuals with my own business coach who I had for a while, like-minded individuals like myself who I met through the idea that, you know, I'm wanting to leave the corporate world as well. Now I'm rewinding a handful of years now. I wanted to leave the corporate world as well. I wanted to get into the coaching and things like that, and help people as well. And so I got a business coach because I, you know, even though I have a degree in business and everything like that, I want to learn from somebody who is where I kind of want to be. And the two prong of that is I was able to build community through that. So I think anybody listening, the first thing you need to do is step out of your comfort zone, say yes to things, and even be proactive in looking, hey, what's around, invite a friend who you are comfortable with. Hey, say you want to go to this thing with me, and for me it was the word yes.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think it's easy to feel for me in my life when I've been stressed. um, it can be counterintuitive in terms of what would be helpful. So my automatic response when I'm stressed, something I learned to do as a kid, is just sort of shut down, withdraw, avoid, and maybe just keep to myself,
Mm.
isolate. And so for people that are like me, this is really in my experience, actually 80% of guys. For guys that are like that, it can be counterintuitive that saying yes, connecting with others, obviously not just anything, anytime, it's going to be something you're interested
Right,
in or that be
exactly.
relatively enjoyable. Maybe you don't want to go see Celine Dion for 3 hours. But saying yes and connecting with other people can actually be the thing that makes you feel more relaxed. That's more nurturing. That's actually beneficial for you.
Yeah.
And I've made that mistake a lot through my life. By isolating, distancing, and it's funny how guys can have this set up from childhood, these things that we basically had to do to protect ourselves, to protect our identity, our ability to make our own choices, or just feel okay, which could be, we were protecting ourselves from an overbearing caretaker, a helicopter parent, whatever the scenario is, that then as an adult, you could still be doing that pattern,
Yeah.
still co-creating this reality, but then feeling the pain of it and complaining about it,
Yeah.
but not seeing how you play a role. So I think that saying yes and being willing to put yourself out there, and to you don't have to do the most extreme things every day,
No, no,
but
of
maybe
course.
your edge is just, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, let's give it a try.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a perfect example. This is one of the things I did most recently. Was I'm very into cold dipping. I live very close to Lynn Canyon Park, and that's, if I didn't know any better that blood actually runs in my veins, I would have thought it was canyon water. So I love the canyon, and so I already do cold dips. That's something I enjoy. And then a friend of mine put me in this cold plunge group on WhatsApp, and I kept seeing that they were, meeting every Wednesday at 7 a.m. to do an ocean dip. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And I went there and met a lot of good people, a lot of, positive, energetic people. And so that's, your point's well taken. You don't necessarily need to go see, Celine Dion, like you said, and get that uncomfortable if you're not into that. But be proactive. And these are the things I enjoy. Who else is doing them? You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something that's tough on a deeper level for people, which is that one of the things I know about myself is that I want people to think that I'm doing really well,
Mm,
and I want them to see me in a certain way, as a winner, as an expert, as, whatever pedestalized versions of myself that, I want people to project onto me. Maybe that I'm perfect, because I'd like to see myself as perfect, that I've got, no insecurities, no fears. And that's just not true. But what I notice is that um, I'm more aware of the fact that there's a part of me that wants that, and at the same time there's a part of me that's become more and more and more aware of that part, and more aware that, wow, that's not true. And what I'm kind of getting at is that when people don't feel good about themselves, about their body, about their purpose, about their experience, about whatever aspect of their life, their bank account, their partner, their lack of intimacy. Sometimes when we're in real pain and struggle, we don't want to be seen by other people. We don't want to interact with others, because it can confront these bigger, intense feelings that we're wrestling with. And it can feel impossible, really, to get off the couch for some people, depending on the state that they're in, and put themselves out there. So it occurs to me as a unique part of this, but I'm saying that because maybe if someone's listening to this, they could see that in themselves, that, wow, maybe I also isolate because I'm not proud of where I'm at. So I don't want, people to see me in that state. Or if they ask me how I'm doing, I'll have to lie, to say,
That, yeah, and let me just add a whole other layer of validation for others going through that, because I feel that I've felt the same thing at times. And I know for me, I just did this personality assessment, I guess, for lack of a better word. I don't think we chatted about this, and I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's called the Enneagram. Have you heard of
Hmm.
the Enneagram before? I won't
Yeah.
go into the details on it, but the point is I did this, and it showed me so many things I knew about myself and validated a lot of things, and it also shows you, you know, what the sins and virtues are of the number in the Enneagram that you happen to be. And for me, one of the things that's very important to me at my core that I know about myself, but this was kind of another kick, is that I really get my juice from helping people. If I can help someone, I get, and if I can't, then I don't feel validated. And I bring that up because if you're having a time or a season in your life where you're feeling like you aren't enough or you're not happy with where you want to be, you're absolutely right. You don't want to see people. But in those moments, being very uncomfortable, I know, and it's the same with, I'll just use the analogy of nutrition. A lot of people will go through something, let's say a breakup, and they don't want to eat, they just don't want to put anything down. And those times you need to recognize, and it's the same with the kind of community aspect, that yeah, this is uncomfortable, I don't want to eat this meal, I might not want to go to this event, but in the end it's going to do more for you than not doing those things. Does that make sense? I realize I'm like, do we need subtitles on this episode? Because I went a few directions there, but just coming back to self-care and getting uncomfortable for me is so important.
Yeah. I mean, the breakup thing is tough because there's so many people that I work with, people in my orbit, workshops that I'm in. People are devastated by the trauma of the rupture of their relationship. Could be betrayal. It could be just a breakup that was out of their hands. So they feel out of orbit and they feel like things are chaotic, and they do experience trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, all
Totally.
these kind of symptoms that are part of a traumatic experience. And it's a challenging position to be in because, you know, it's like breakups are like a car crash in an emotional way. And if anyone has been in a car wreck, that, sometimes you need someone to come and sit by your side for a second and
Yeah.
check in on you and make sure you're okay.
Mhm.
And hey, are you good to get up? And are you all right? It's like we kind of need someone by our side to make sure we get on with life, to make sure
Yeah.
we pick ourselves back up or that our wounds are tended to. So again, the community piece here being important and being vulnerable enough, and hopefully you got someone trusted enough, safe enough that, you can let them in on what you're going through and they can at
Yeah.
least validate that and say, hey, I understand. And hey, maybe we can go for a walk. Or
Exactly.
maybe we can't walk. Maybe we can just sit here and have a chat. But to just do something with other people and come back to connection
Yeah. Agreed.
is a big deal. So, Chris, earlier we benchmarked something which you asked me about myself in terms of what I've noticed or what comes up or, what I'm working on. And I think that there's many, many things today that we've talked about that are relevant for me. And I'm always working on the non-reactivity, always working on, not taking things personally and trying to, like I said, kind of widen my range of ability, of expression, of feeling, of sensitivity. And I guess what's going on for me personally is I'm always looking at what my growth edges are. And so is my partner. And one of the big growth edges with me and her right now is presence. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is I have a podcast, I have a coaching business. So not only do I facilitate the individual and couple sessions, but I also have to market myself, create content. This year we adopted a puppy. So we've got a 10-month-old puppy who constantly needs attention and walks and runs and all the things.
Busy.
She works a full-time job. She also is a somatic sex coach, and we're also moving, this month. So there's so many things happening. And one of the things that she can crave from me is my presence, my attention. And when my partner tells me that she wants something, that she's yearning for something, it's very easy to go into my head and say, oh God, it's never enough, right?
Yeah.
Oh boy, here's another thing, you just need from me.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of guys can often feel that way because if they're in a heteronormative relationship, their woman is always wanting more love, wanting more presence, wanting, more of something. And some teachers actually explicitly say that this is just how feminine energy is. It always wants more. And so what I'm just saying there is that my opportunity is just really taking responsibility for that as she takes responsibility for things that I need from her.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways you could be present. When we say that, I think many people think of lotus position, sitting in meditation, cross-legged, and we have flowers and bumblebees and the sunshine.
Yeah.
And meditation, very, very powerful. Breath work, yoga, all kinds of things that are going to bring you in your body, lifting weights. But I've also noticed that there's very small moments where I can be going from one thing to the next. I can be rushing from one session to another. Session, boom, out the door, take the dog. Okay, come back, boom, next session. And I can actually just for 30 seconds go up to my partner. And if she's working, I say, hey, honey, do you have just a moment? And say, hey, I want to let you know I really appreciate this about you. Or maybe I just approach her and put a hand on her back and say, hey, I love you very much. And
Legendary.
it doesn't require me or you or anyone listening to, for an hour, sit down in the middle of the day. We've got a lot going on and eye gaze for 60 minutes. We actually can just bring that quality just for a moment. And it's sort of a reminder to our partner that, hey, I'm here. I know we got a lot going on. And I love you and I'm committed, but also a reminder to ourselves like, hey, okay, I can do this and I can stretch a little bit and I can be more mindful. And I'm always teaching and talking about these things. And what I'm emphasizing here is that I'm working on this stuff like everyone else. I like to think that I'm pretty good at this point, but there's always things to learn and there's always going to be edges and, new patterns that emerge to be transformed.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I think what are, you know, for those, in heteronormative relationships, what their woman is asking and what can get misconstrued is, I want hours of your time. It's not enough what you're giving me. But if you're looking and you're mindful of these little moments like you just expressed, which, I said legendary because it's an amazing thing to do, is just that small moment. And if you're not around her, give her a quick call and say, hey, I was just thinking about you. I know, I want you to know how much I love you and I care about you. And these little things go such a long way. I absolutely love what you just expressed there.
Yeah. Well, my experience, I hear a lot of people talk about their divorces, their separations, their breakups, and they'll often say that it was a death by a thousand cuts and
Mm,
that it wasn't just one thing. Now, some couples do deal with one thing. There was a bad moment, there was a bad decision. Usually it's a big betrayal, affair, disclosure, something like this that the couple has a hard time repairing. There are some things happen that, are just a deal breaker for people. But most people I talk to, especially with long-term relationships, they feel like it was these small things that did or didn't happen over and over again over time that
yeah,
ultimately got them feeling so disconnected and got to a place where it's like, I just can't do this anymore.
for sure. And I would venture a guess that it has something to do with emotional connectivity and communication.
Yeah.
because if those things, it's very easy to get comfortable in a relationship. I say, one thing I always work towards is I always want, I never want to I never want to stop dating my partner. I don't want to stop doing things like surprising her with a homemade dinner and things like that. I always want to keep, I know how important emotional connection is above all. And for me and anybody else listening out there, that would be the first category that I would be looking at, is how is the emotional connection. Everyone loves the honeymoon stage, and obviously a relationship changes over time. That's natural, but you can create, almost new honeymoon stages with a grown and a more ripe relationship. I just find, for me, it's been emotional connection, communication are my cornerstones. I could easily have those tattooed on my body along with the rest of them, but those are so important.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely agree. So, Chris, appreciate you coming on the show. Before we wrap up, I'd love to let the listeners know where they can find you, what you're up to next, or maybe there's something interesting that you've got going on that we should plug here before we wrap.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. So you can find me on Instagram is the primary place, at Chris Menz Coach. That's at ChrisMenzCoach. Come connect with me over there. We have something really special going on. My partner and I, we have a company, Lifestyle Transformation, and we focus on the three pillars of what we believe is creating a well-rounded, healthy individual. We lead with the physical pillar. So we have a 90-day transformation program that we actually work with Nick in right now. We have a mindset component as well. So dealing with triggers, things that people are going through, whether it be, stress eating or anything along that lines. We like to give a full, well-rounded spectrum of growth in that area. And then we build community as well. So like-minded individuals who are, sharing recipes, success stories, challenges, things like that. We've kind of built a very well-rounded program that we're very excited about. So feel free to reach out to me to find out more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll put all the appropriate links in the description. Make sure that people can find you online. I started working with you and Ryan mid-July on a 3-month program to lose 20 pounds. And what I accomplished was, actually, I did that in 8 weeks, in 2 months. And we're still going, still seeing what more we can do.
Yeah.
And, maybe I have worked hard and stuck to the program, but you guys have put together something great there. And so, I believe in it. I've seen the results. Probably the best personal training program I've ever participated in.
Oh, we
And
appreciate that.
yeah, really, really happy with the results. I have no hesitation recommending you guys to anyone that's interested.
Yeah, you absolutely crush it. When I do my check-ins, I know, oh, this is going to be an amazing one. I check on your calendar and I see, oh, yeah, Nick's killed it this last week. So yeah, your progress has been nothing short of amazing, my friend.
I appreciate it. Well, we'll keep it going. Chris, thanks for joining us, and look
Thank you.
forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.